Okay. Welcome back, Max fans. So, what we're going to do today is going to work with MIDI, and eventually we're going to get to the point where we can talk from Max to Logic and other programs like it by just pressing our space bar. Okay, and I promise you that was not me pressing the keyboard. That's me pressing the keyboard. Okay, totally different, right? Sounds totally different. All right, so let's hide Logic for now. Goodbye. So we did a little bit of data flow. Last time I showed you a few things about hot and cold inlets and basic math, and we got a little bit into how to do a volume knob for a basic synthesizer. Now we're going to work a little bit with MIDI, and this is one really practical way you can use Max to do things within a DAW. So let's look at our MIDI objects. Okay, so really I'm going to tell you the ones that you're going to use probably the most, but you can always search them either through here, through tutorials, okay? But the big ones are going to be Note In. All right. And Control In. So let's just look at these two. So I have a MIDI keyboard already hooked up. And this is the Akai MPK88. So what we want to do, you have to make sure that your MIDI keyboard is connected. And we're going to go to the extras and go to MIDI tester. And okay, this shows us a little bit about our input devices. Okay, so if we click on it, these are all the devices that are on there. And these are all the possible output devices. Okay, we're going to need those later. But if you don't see yours popping up here, then it means either it's not connected, Max doesn't know about it, something's wrong, and you have to fix that using your audio MIDI settings. Or maybe Max just isn't aware of it yet, and maybe you need to restart Max. All right, so if yours isn't showing up there, then we have a problem. And that's not the scope of this particular tutorial. All right, so let's first print out what's coming out of here. Now this is going to tell us the pitch from our input. And if I double click, I'm going to go out of edit mode, double click on this, it's going to tell me I can specify which device I want to basically look at. For us, for input, we just want all, because we just want to know what data is coming in through our MIDI channels. Okay, so you see I get the note number, which is, these are your standard MIDI note numbers. 60 is considered MIDI note number for middle C. And notice I get 2. One on, and then I'm going to get 1 off. All right, so I'm going to call this pitch, and we're going to do another print statement. And then we're going to call that velocity. So that's what our second outlet is for. So notice the first one gives you the pitch of 67, the velocity was 80. The minute I let it go, it's going to do pitch 67, velocity 0. 0 means note off, okay? And then we can do this would be our channel. But right now we're working on either all channels or channel 1. Okay, so that's what Note In does. It basically tells you the pitches and velocities are coming in from your MIDI controller. All right, now we're going to do the same thing with Control In. Now you probably have some knobs and sliders on your MIDI controller. So that's what this is for, controller in. That's going to be all those sliders and knobs. Alright, oops, I'm going to print this one, which is our number. So now I'm going to take a slider and I'm going to move it. So the important one is the number. This is a slider that has the number 33, and then you can see the value goes up and down. Now here's a knob. Notice how the number is different from the other one. It's got a unique number, 17. So you can use these numbers to control different parts of your patch. You can use it like you would any other slider. So let me show you. If we just take a slider, let's get rid of value. And we know that's a number, so let's just put a number there. Wrong button. Alright, so there's my slider. And there's slider 33, and 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, right? So I could basically program this to do different things with my sliders. Okay, same with knobs. Okay, knobs are going to be a little bit different. You're going to get different values from knobs. So you just want to look at that data before you start working. But control in gets you the knobs, right? Knobs and sliders. And note in gets you the keyboard. And also, I forgot, it does the keypad. So let's just grab that real quick. So the pads. I have 16 pads, like a drum machine pads. Okay, so those have different MIDI numbers as well. And you can probably program those to be different. Alright, so those are the big MIDI inputs. Remember, these are comments to comment your code. Now we're going to do output. And the main output we're going to use is note out. Alright. Okay, so what we want to do is create a note and then have that note go somewhere internally in our computer. So if I go out of edit mode, Command E, I double click on note out like we did with note in. This gives me all the options for note out. So I can use the built-in synthesizer, this is the audio unit DLS synth. It's really basic. We're going to use that for now. I could send it out my own Akai ports and go to an external synth, or I could go from the generic from Max or the generic IAC drivers. And these are ways for software to talk to other software. So this is the inter-application communication driver, and this is similar, but it's a specialized one for Macs. So that's what we're going to do in Logic in a little bit. Alright, so in order to create a note or make a note, you need an object called makeNote. And makeNote needs some arguments. So if we look at the help, control click, tells you what the arguments do. So they are velocity, duration, and channel. And what it does, okay, nothing all that exciting, but what it does is it takes a note and combines it into a note, velocity, duration, and channel list that note out needs to send to a synthesizer in another program. So we can change those either with our arguments, everything but the channel, or we can set them. So we're just going to do a velocity of 90, duration of 1 second, and on channel 1. Alright, so now you see the MIDI channel is there as an option. So we can change all of these with inlets. Okay, and then we have a make note. Now, these are cold inlets, I believe, as well. So we have to wait till the pitch changes for any of these to take effect. Then the output we have is your pitch, your velocity, and the channel. Which note out needs, what do you know, pitch, velocity, and channel. So we're just going to take our outlets to our inlets, just like this. Fancy. And since we don't need to really worry about right now changing velocity, duration, or channel, we're just going to change the note number. For now, we're going to use an integer. And you'll notice that MIDI notes don't start until about 36. Okay, so that is not coming from Logic, by the way. If we double click on our note out, it's coming from that built-in synthesizer. So if we want it to come from Logic, we need to do some things here and in Logic. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to do the from max port. Now this is going to actually talk to Logic eventually. All right. When we open up Logic, we're going to go into the, and make sure if it doesn't look, if you don't find what I'm telling you, we want to go to what's called the MIDI environment. If you don't see that, you got to go to your preferences and turn on your advanced tools. So you're going to click show advanced tools, and then all these are going to come up, and just to enable all, and you're going to see the window flash a few times, and then it's going to eventually allow you to select the environment. This is more advanced use. Okay, so I'm just going to delete this. See here, these are all the same things we saw in Max in a very difficult to understand interface. Thank you, Logic. And all these are like little Max outlets. Okay, you got to find the one that says from Max, and you want to connect that to your input. Okay. Now check your keyboard and make sure. Alright, so we're getting input, but no output. Okay, so I must have done something. Which is always fun when this happens, because it was literally working right when we started. Alright, for now, let's just pretend that that's going to work. Let's go back over here, and probably not going to, yeah, we're seeing it happen over here, but we're not hearing it. And what did I do wrong? That's all good. Is this working? Yeah, we lost audio from Logic, so we're going to just quit Logic and do it again, so you get to see it again, the wonderful world of computing. All right. So, all right, yeah. New. Don't save. Software. I'm assuming by this point you've already used Logic, so you don't need to know what I just did. All right. There it is. Let's make this a hair smaller. Let's go back to Max. Okay, so now every time we change this number, it's going to go over to Logic, assuming Logic is actually working, and also talk to Logic's synthesizers. Okay, so now we're going to use something called a message. Just this one right there, or just hit M. See the little shortcuts are in the list up here? You just need to hit those numbers. So we're going to do make MIDI numbers. So message is 60. I'm going to make a new message, 62. A new message, 63. Oh, that was not a message. Wrong letter. 63. There we go. And all I have to do is connect these to our pitch. Command E. All right, see how that's working? This message goes into our make note, creates a list of pitch, velocity, duration, and channel. Goes out of our note out on this port. We went into Logic, into our environment. This is sort of an old school place, and you go to clicks and ports. And you find the from max, and you connect it. And one thing you do want to do is just disconnect all the other one, the sum, so that you don't get any crosstalk if you're trying to do it on like max 2, or you can get weird MIDI loops as well. Okay. And so that's basically going through a software port into Logic, then it works just like any other synthesizer. All right, so you're thinking, well, that's great, but I can also do that on my keyboard, right? And great, it doesn't see my keyboard now. You gotta love it. Someone's doing something to me. Well, you can do that on your keyboard just like you can by clicking on these little messages like buttons. Actually, we're going to use those. So let's make a few more. Hit Command D to duplicate. We're going to do 65 and 67. Okay, so if you don't know what these notes are, you just remember middle C is 60. And so D would be 62. C sharp would be 61 in between. And then you can just count up from there. So for every C is up 12 or down 12 from the last C. So middle C would be 60. If you want to go down an octave, it would be 48, up an octave, 72. And you just add your numbers there. That's how I do it, or you find a chart on Google. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to kind of randomize this. We're going to use something called random. And we want to select between, I think we have 6 pitches right now. 5. Well, we'll make one more. We'll make the last one C again, 72. Okay, so what we want to do is randomly select one of these. Okay, but you'll notice that what random outputs is just a number. So we need a bang, hit B. Let's just clear that. So notice now it's giving me a random number between 0 and 5. Why 0 and 5? Well, computers count 0 kind of like number 1. So it's random 6 numbers, but it's going to actually count from 0 to 5. Okay, so. But notice how none of these, that wouldn't work for any of these, because these inlets only trigger the message or change the message. We need to actually trigger the message with something else called select. And since we're going from 0 to 5, we're going to just type in numbers 0 through 5. Now, what does select do? Well, remember, control click, get help. But I'm going to connect the random to the hot inlet. And what select basically does is something sort of like basic logic. It says, if the number is 2, then go out the third outlet. See that? Bang, if input matches 2. So if we connect this to, for example, here, that means anytime there's a 2, it's going to select this note. And if anytime it's a 1, it's going to select this note. And basically it's going to execute just like pressing it. Okay, but I won't have to physically press it. And make sure it's always the left inlet of the message, not the right, because the right sets it if you wanted to change it for some reason. Now, you're going to start noticing we get really ugly patches this way. Look at that. Ugh. There are ways to fix that, but just another reason Max annoys me is they change the shape of these to be ugly. All right, so now I should be able to press this and get a random note. All right, cool. So that's great. I can probably click that all day if I wanted to. What if I wanted it to just do it by itself, like what was happening when we first started this tutorial? Well, put you aside over here. We do have something that's sort of like a sequencer, sort of like a metronome, and it is. It's called Metro. If you look at Metro, you'll notice that it's a very basic metronome, and it doesn't function in beats per minute, although there are those that do. It functions in millisecond intervals. So if you wanted a note every half second, type in 500, which is 500 milliseconds. Remember, in Max we deal with milliseconds for the most part, then because we're dealing with very short periods of time. Connect the output, which is basically a bang. Then we have to turn it on. It doesn't tell you this, but you'll see in the tutorial or the help for Metro that it needs a toggle. So, need some space here. Now when we turn this on, we're just going to get a new note every half second. Okay, now you're saying, well, that's cool, but it's really boring because there's no real rhythm. Well, here's one way to trick it into rhythm, is that you can give it, the random generator, a larger number to choose from. And then what is going to happen is that sometimes it just won't choose one of these numbers. And then it will basically come out here if input doesn't match. So we're going to print that. And you'll see it come up over here. And that will act like a space or like a rhythm. We're going to change this a little faster so we can get some crunchy grooves going on here. Okay. So, with all that, let's say clicking a mouse button is just too much to do for you. We're going to do one more thing. We're going to do an object called key. And what key does is it basically turns the keys on your keyboard. As you can see, it's going to be a little weird at first, into actual numbers. These are called ASCII numbers. And when you're typing them, you'll notice that some of these are also shortcuts, and kind of another weird Max bug. All right, but one thing that I do know, if I know anything, is that the key number 32 is the space bar. So just like we did down here, we're actually going to look for number 32. So if it finds 32, then turn it on. And that's also what I had this set to, if you notice. It looks almost identical. So what I'm going to do is just delete this. So we only get our new one. And now when I hit the space bar, it's going to say number 32 comes out here, and it's going to say, oh, I'm looking for 32, and it's going to bang. And it's going to turn on the toggle, which turns on our metronome, and it's going to bang every 250 milliseconds, create a random number, right? And it will only look for these in the stream of random numbers. Bang comes out depending on which number it detected, And it's going to click this or execute this message. It goes into make note, creates the list, goes to note out, goes through some circuitry into Logic. And here we go. You ready? And that's electronic music.